Nice. I think we are live. Yep. Okay. All right. So, let's check in. How's everybody doing? Do you guys have questions? Any comments with, doing readings this week? If you did a practice reading, or any questions that have come up from last week? Anything like that. And feel free, if you are somebody who are watching on the replay, to just post those questions under the video or just send me a message. I really like when you guys post the questions in the group though, because usually if you have a question, that means that somebody else has it too. All right.
Not much, just been practicing a little bit on a couple of friends. And
okay, cool. Yeah. And that's it. Like, and your questions will probably come through the practice a little bit, where like just things come up as you're practicing, as you're getting into it. You'll kind of like have little things come up that we wouldn't necessarily think of. So I invite you guys to share your experiences in the group. I invite you to post your questions in the group. I wanted to talk a little bit today, I know I covered it a bit, but I just wanted to talk a little bit more about readings, what we want to do with that. And like, so this might be, right now it might not be in-person readings, right? That might be a little bit more challenging, but we might be doing readings over video like we're doing here. We might be doing readings over email. I really thought, when I was learning, I really loved to do the email readings. I still love to do them because I think that it's fun. You can kind of just flow with it. And so I really enjoyed doing those because it was a nice way to sort of sit with the cards and feel them out and take my time, as I was learning and as I was practicing, so that I could just kind of feel it out and really get a sense of the cards before I dove right in. So that is a great way if you guys are doing practice readings. It's a great format to just kind of more comfortably read. Now one of the benefits or one of the challenges that come from an email reading is, unless you know the person quite well, or the situation quite well, you might have questions. You might be getting a feeling on something and you're not necessarily going to get confirmation on that. Where like some in person, sometimes people will say, oh yeah, like that's what this is. And it will help you to be able to sort of build upon that. So you don't necessarily get that with the email readings, but there are the other benefits of just being able to take your time and to feel that out. So if any of you are interested at this point in doing a practice email reading on a stranger, I am happy to connect that for you. I am happy to get that set up for you. If you don't if you want to set that up for yourself in your own ways, you're more than welcome to do that. But I'm also happy to get people who would be open to receiving readings and things like that, where you could just practice and they would know that you guys are doing practice readings. So there wouldn't be pressure or anything like that. So let me know, get in touch with me if that's something that you would like. So reading. So before the reading, again, and we kind of covered this, but I want you to really think about setting those intentions before you do your reading. Really think about what is the intention here? What is the question? Setting the intention that we're connecting only with energy that's of the light, helpful, healing, preventative, all the stuff that we talked about. Incorporating any prayers that you want to incorporate as part of the prep for the reading. Anything that just makes it feel right and ready. Clearing your space, creating a clear space for you to do the reading on. It's been when I was home for a little while before I started to come back to the office to do my readings again, it was kind of interesting because I found that it was a little more challenging for me to do the readings because the workspace that I was working with was basically my bedroom. And so I'd have to do all the clearing and things like that. And that just felt really different to me than to have this designated space that I have here at the office. I just find here that I'm more in flow. So you might think about that too. Where do you feel more in flow? Where do you feel more like in a place, in an energy that allows you to be able to do and provide good readings. So just thinking about that too, you know, and clearing the space. And so I did a lot of that at home just to like make it feel lighter, because I've done so much work here on the energy here to create a healing space, to create an intuitively connected space. So I had to do a lot of that there. So just like thinking about, what do I need to clear this, whether you're saging, whether you're using clearing crystals like we've talked about, just getting it ready. One of the things that you can do to kind of minimize an energy exchange, like even thinking about like the surface that you're laying it down on, is you might have some kind of a cloth or something that you use for your readings that you lay down to lay the cards out on. So that's an option for you as well. Some people have used like scarves. I have like a scarf that I like to use sometimes for my readings, and it was like one that my dad gave me as a gift, and I just really love it, and so I use it for the readings. But it can be a cloth, it can be really anything that you just feel pulled to. Some people like actually wrap their cards in it. Think about, before you're even, you know, diving in to pulling the cards, what your spread is going to look like if you're going to use a specific spread. That way your guides know where to put the cards. Like we talked about, prepare so that can be the best possible reading. And so when you're in your mind saying, or I used to draw it out with people sometimes, like if I was getting really specific, and sometimes I still do. So if we're sitting down and we're really diving in and we're really taking a look at some stuff, and usually what I will do is get a sense of what their question is, what their intention is, and then I create a spread right then and there with them, for them. And so I actually draw it, and then I set it on the table so that they can kind of see, this position means this position means that. And it also is a very clear message to spirit. This is where I want you to put the cards. So it can be a really helpful format. Now, spirit, I've worked so much with them, like it just kind of flows, and we kind of are more in tune with that. But I used to do that a lot more so that I could prepare spirit and help my clients that I was working with see what that spread and what that layout was. Let's see. So just anything else that feels important, again, as part of your reading ritual. And like I talked about before, having that ritual can really make a difference in terms of your vibration, in terms of the vibration of the reading, in terms of the experience that the person has. So just being mindful of that, and whatever it is that you feel pulled to do prior. You know, when I come into my office, the first thing that I do is I designate a little bit of time at the beginning of my day to do a short meditation and to kind of connect with who's coming in that day, and like, is there anything that I need to know, or is there anything that I need to like prepare for, or anything like that, at the beginning of my day. So that's part of my ritual that applies to the readings, and it applies to my other sessions. So to read, you know, you're going to ask them, what is your intention? And some people will look at you and not understand what intention means. And it really is as simple as like, what do you want to get out of this reading? So I usually, if I don't think that they'll understand that, if we haven't, you know, especially if they're new to me and we haven't had a lot of conversation about intention, I might just say, what are you hoping to get out of the reading? Or do you have a specific question or a specific area or areas of your life that you're wanting to take a look at? Again, I know we talked about shuffling in the past. Do you want to allow them to shuffle the cards, to put their energy on the cards, or do you not? You know, whatever feels best and right for you. And like I said before, I have some decks I'm much more comfortable doing that with than others. So it's all about what works best for you. And then you're going to shuffle the cards, or have them shuffle the cards, and then you're going to lay them out. And again, prior to that, you're going to have a sense of, how do I want to lay out the cards? How do you know, or how am I going to choose the cards? Am I going to see what floats up, like we talked about? Am I going to split the deck? Some people really like to like also notice like that card that's on the bottom of the deck. They like to pull that. We're going to talk about that a little bit more next week. But so that kind of stuff, how are you going to pull the cards? Like what is your intention with that as that's being shuffled? If you're using any extra tools or anything, you know, figure out how you're going to incorporate those. Like, for example, if you're going to incorporate crystals into the reading, you might invite the person to choose their crystals during that time and place them wherever they feel called to place them. And you'll notice like they might get placed next to certain cards, and then those are interacting with each other, that kind of stuff. And then afterwards, you want to clear the energy in the deck, you know, so that you're not using that deck for yourself or for somebody else, and carrying that energy over. Because sometimes, you know, most of the time I set the intention that when somebody sits down for a reading with me, that it's cleared, you know, like that suddenly the cards are connecting to their energy. But I still like to clear it. I still think it's a good idea to do. So doing that, and taking the time to clear it. So, and then you're going to clear it again before you start another reading, if you were to start another reading, whether it's for yourself or for somebody else. And then I also think, like, I really like to express gratitude in some way, you know, whether it's a short prayer at the end of the session, or we even talk about it together, you know, just the gratitude for the messages that have come through. Let's be grateful for that. You know, our guides and our angels are here to support us, but I think gratitude just really helps to support that. It helps to support the messages coming through. It helps to support us to receive further intuitive information. All of it is just really good. So we want to have gratitude for that. The things that I really wanted to cover with you guys too, though, is diving into, just because we did kind of cover the readings again, but I wanted to revisit that, and I wanted to talk about other considerations, because I do think that you don't go around just like reading everybody, and you don't go around without any structure to it, or without any you know, ethics connected with that. And we've been talking about that a little bit, but you know, one thing I think is important to consider is that sometimes you might feel compelled to say no to do a reading. So I'll give some examples of like times that I've said no. Times that I've said no, number one, have been when somebody has gotten in touch with me, and just to connect with their energy to do a reading is like, it feels very negative, you know, it feels very heavy. It just doesn't feel like an energy that I want to tap into, or an energy that at that particular time it would be really open to receiving the kind of light-filled messages that I would be delivering, you know, because sometimes people aren't looking for light-filled messages. And so there have been very few times, but because of the intentions that I set around my business, I'm pretty lucky in terms of who comes through my door. But every once in a while, you might find yourself getting that, especially if you haven't set your intentions about who you're providing readings for. Other reasons, the biggest reasons that I have said no to readings is that I truly believe that our purpose here is not to tell people what to do, is not to be the authority in somebody's life, is not to give them all the answers, is not to create a dependency. And I think that sometimes, like, people just get into that place where they're putting the locus of control outside of themselves, right? Like, they're handing it over to you. They're basically making you like this oracle, right? And making you like this authority on their life, or, you know, and that you have the answers. And it's very much a feeling of that they do not have the answers. And in my experience, this just isn't the case. Like, we are all the authority on our intuitive path, the best authority. I don't care how psychic somebody is. I don't care how talented somebody is. We're the authority. And so what I find sometimes happens is that people get caught in this loop of kind of a dependency. Like, I can't make a decision unless I consult with my psychic, you know, that kind of energy. And we just want to be really mindful to not create that kind of energy, because like it's just not beneficial to that person. That is really disconnecting that person from their own personal power. So there have been several times when I feel like we're starting to move into that territory of a dependency, or a checking in, because sometimes we're checking in with spirit too much. I've done it myself, right? Where I'm pulling cards on things over and over and over again, and I kind of know the answer, right? But I don't maybe like the answer, so I just keep pulling cards. And this is where, and we've talked about this, but where we'll get those cards that don't really match the intention, or you'll get the same cards over and over again, because spirit is really saying to you, like, stop pushing it. You know, we get asked and answered. We gave you your answer. There you go. You know, and or sometimes you're not ready to have the answer, or you're not supposed to have the answer just yet. We're not supposed to have all of the answers. And some things take time, and some things have to develop before we can have those answers. And so that's another reason why you might say no, or when you start to pull cards for somebody, you might get a sense of like, I don't think that they're meant to have this answer right now. I don't think, you know, I've sent money back to people when they've sent me money for an email reading, because when I went to pull the cards, like, I wasn't getting an answer, and I'm not going to give them bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, so I just have said, like, listen, it's not time for you to have an answer. And so I'm not able to do that reading for you. So you might find yourself experiencing that, or you might find yourself saying no to a reading, especially if it's crossing into that territory of that becoming a dependency. Yes, it's nice to be able to do readings, but we really have to consider what's best for the person that you're doing the reading for. And we have a responsibility in this. There is a responsibility. This is, while in New York State, we have to say that it's, and I don't know about the other states, I only know about New York, but here in New York State, we have to technically say that tarot readings are for entertainment purposes only. Otherwise, they're considered to be illegal. And I think some other states are set up that way too. And so, yes, it is technically legally considered to be for entertainment purposes, but I will never approach it in that way. I take it really seriously. I feel that there's a responsibility, and some people will absolutely live their life based on what you tell them in their cards, without questioning, without feeling it out for themselves. And that's the very thing that I want to avoid. I really want to always come back to, but what do you feel about it? Or if that doesn't connect for you, leave it, you know, take what speaks to you, leave the rest, because we don't want to create this dependency. We don't want to hijack this person's own ability to connect with the answers. So you guys will find, and I say this a lot, but like, and people sometimes get irritated with it, but when somebody sends me a psychic question, my first response back almost always is, what do you feel about it? What do you think about it? You know, so I think we want to just approach the cards, we want to approach the reading as a support to their own intuition rather than giving them the answer, if that makes sense. So it can maybe give some more clarity around things to help them to get a better sense of what the energy is around it. But at the end of the day, we really want to support them making their own decisions and support them tuning in and connecting with their own intuition. I think that's really important. So you also want to think about how you're wording your questions, right? And you'll get a better sense of this as you work on it, but wording your questions well is going to be really helpful for your reading. You know, if the person's question, for example, is, will I get a job? You know, you're probably going to get some form of cards that result in yes, because it might take 5 years, you know, who knows, but at a certain point they're going to get a job, right? So you're probably going to get a yes. So that's not going to be the best question to ask. You might ask something about, you know, will I get this specific job, or will I get a job in my area of training within the next few months, or something like that, where you can get it a little bit more specific so you can get more information. And then you can ask follow-up questions like, what is this job? You know, what are the qualities of this job? What else do we need to know here? And just sort of exploring that and keeping that open so that you're getting the best information, because the cards really will answer the question that you ask. You know, if somebody asks, will I get married? You know, probably chances are most of the time you're going to get a yes, but they might be thinking that it's too the person that they're in a relationship with, and the yes isn't for that, the yes is for 5 years down the road. So we might ask about, am I going to be married to this person? And like, I would also add to that, let's take a look more at what this relationship is and any messages around this relationship, so we can just kind of take a deeper look at that. So
I've
asking,
already seen that. Sorry.
have you?
Sorry.
No,
I've
jump
already seen that, you ask a certain question
in.
and you have to be very specific, because I've seen it in a couple readings that I've done, but also that I've watched, where the answer technically was given,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a little bit different than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yep.
answered the question, but not exactly in the way that I asked it.
So when that happens, you can kind of say, okay, like, how else do I need to ask this question, or what other questions do I need to ask to expand upon this? That'll be helpful.
You've got to be as specific as possible to get the answer that's,
So
more,
as
I guess,
specific as possible, but not so specific that you keep it stuck.
keep it open a little bit to open
So,
for.
yeah.
Okay.
So like, you may find actually that sometimes, depending on what the question is or depending on the situation, if you're asking like something too specific, like, you might not get a good answer or a good read on it. But if you're looking at it from a broader perspective, or you're asking other follow-up questions, it will help you to understand what's actually being said here.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like adjusting.
So middle of the road.
Middle of the road accordingly. And we all know the best question. We've really covered that. What do they need to know for their highest and best good? And you can incorporate that always, no matter what like the category is that they're asking about. So if that's not their question and they're saying, I want to know about my career, I almost always like to incorporate that as part of the reading, even if they're not specifically asking that. So we might take a look at some specific jobs, for example, that they are exploring as possibilities. And then we might take a look at, okay, but what do you need to know about your highest and best good in connection with career? Because that can be where some really good information is. Because like, let's say, for example, they're looking at different career options. Usually that means there's something being stirred up within them that is connected to career. Like, they're recognizing that some changes are needed. So asking a question like that can actually give you some information and can help sometimes redirect that a little bit if they're off track, or if they're boxing themselves into too small of something. Like, for example, if they're asking about specific jobs, but they're all sort of in one category, and it's really time for them to explore what they're actually passionate about, that might be totally different. That kind of stuff would come up if you said, but what else do we need to know about this person's career that they need to know for their highest and best good? So that kind of stuff. So thinking about your questions and adjusting them, making those adjustments. You also want to keep your focus on the querent. So the querent, the client, whatever you want to call that, but keep the focus on the person that you're reading for as best you can, because there really is a tendency, and maybe you guys have already seen this in your readings, but people want to know about other people. Like, I'll get a lot of like relationship stuff. What does he think about me? What are his feelings about me? And you can explore like the energy around that in relation to that particular person, but you really want to bring it back to like, is this relationship best for you? Would be a better question. Is this person, this connection in your highest and best good? Because when I'm doing a reading, I don't really care about like that other person's highest and best good. I have respect for that, right? But I'm not diving into that, because I think you have to really be a little bit careful with that, because you're starting to cross a boundary of somebody's privacy. So it's not that you can't. Like, I do relationship readings all the time, but my focus, my priority is really on the person that I'm reading for and what's best for them. And so we might get some information that comes through about that other person, maybe about their energy, or like their level of openness, you know, because so for example, if like that person is totally closed to a relationship, that's helpful information for the person that you're reading for, right? So that connects to them. So you just kind of want to make them your priority or their main focus. Every once in a while, I'll have people come in and all of their questions are like, I want to know about my kids, and I want to know about my husband's life path, and I want to know about this. And I really try to like redirect that back. I prefer not to do those readings because we're crossing into other people's energy without that permission. So I will ask them, let's redirect that. What about you? You know, and that tells you something, by the way, about them. That tells you that they're prioritizing everybody else. And like, what about you? Why aren't you part of this equation here? Why aren't you part of the questions? Why aren't you part of the curiosity about your own life and your own life path? Like, who are you separate from all of this? So that usually leads to some really good discussion as well, and exploration of how do they start to make themselves a priority. So it's pretty cool. So you really want to redirect that. And I already talked about this, but keeping the responsibility, understanding the responsibility that comes with reading for people and behaving accordingly. Again, that's just so important. You know, you never want to like, God, I've seen people do this and it's terrible, but like treat it like you are the absolute expert. And if they disagree with you, you know, like that, then they're wrong, you know. And but you're telling someone about their lives. In fact, there was when I was doing psychic development, and I'm not going to use names here because like this was actually out of town, I ended up switching teachers from one teacher to another because the one teacher was saying, if you're reading for somebody and they disagree with you 3 times, you kick them out. I was like, what? I knew intuitively that absolutely was not right. You know, like we have to honor the person who's in front of us as that authority on their own life. And yes, some people will be difficult to read for. And so we can acknowledge that. We can have a conversation about that. Maybe like that's one of those times if they feel so closed or they don't want to be there. You know, I prefer to do readings for people who actually want to be there. And if they don't, if there's that vibe of like, oh, my friend forced me to come, I'm not going to do a reading. I'm not interested in that. Like that's not helpful to them. That's not helpful to me unless there's some level of openness for that. But you know, like I just, that was really what made me decide to switch teachers and to study under somebody who honored people and their own authority. So just thinking about that, and there really is an old school way of thinking in the new age field where it's like psychics and mystics and readers and all of that like have this energy of I'm up here and you're down here and you come to me because I am the authority. I know everything. I'm special. And the bottom line is, while we all have our own gifts, we all have our own gifts, right? So like this doesn't make you up here, but people will look at you sometimes like you're up here. So you just want to make sure that you're not creating an energy that facilitates that more. Yes, like absolutely they can be thankful to you and appreciative of you, but you just don't want to create a situation where I don't know, like where it's a power over kind of situation where you're taking advantage of. I've heard awful stories of, you know, people even here locally, and again, I won't name names, but like just saying, you know, oh, you have this curse that was placed on you, and I'm the only person who knows how to remove that from your aura, and you have to pay me this much money, and like just things like that, or telling people that they're going to I had someone come in who was like, it was almost her 45th birthday and a psychic had told her that she was going to die when she was 45. She's still alive, you know, 5 years later. But she was terrified and she was a mess. So just thinking about the damage that the messages can do if you're not thinking about the person that's in front of you. So I just think that's really key here. So we're going to talk about swords today. So swords, you know, they're probably my least favorite of all 4 of the suits here because like to me, I don't know, a lot of them have a like kind of a yucky energy to it, right? But it makes sense because swords for me represent thoughts and thinking. And thoughts and thinking are so strongly tied to how we feel, to how we're functioning, to how we're navigating our life. And so, like, it's pretty major stuff, the sword stuff, because we're taking a look at how are your thoughts impacting your life. Swords are connected with the element of air. So, they are connected with the zodiac signs Aries, Gemini, Libra. So again, if you're connected with astrology more, you might find yourself connecting the cards more with those energies or with the qualities of those air signs. They represent our thoughts, our mind, mental processes. So anything that would be connected with the mind, the thoughts. Other keywords can be things like difficulty sleeping. You'll see that in these cards, headaches, worrying, thoughts, learning, and mental stimulation. So anything that's connected with, just making sure there was no one else trying to sign in. I thought I saw that. Okay. And mental stimulation. So all of that stuff, anything connected with the brain and thoughts and the mind. Let's see. So, I closed you guys out. There we go. All right, so we're going to start with Ace of Swords. So this is a really, God, I have such a weird glare today. Can you guys see that card?
Just maybe you're facing the window, right? Is it maybe just the light off the window?
Let me just make an adjustment so that we can, hold on. See if I can close that. All right. I tried to keep them open a little bit. But, it's dark in here. Let's see how this is. Okay, that's better, right? You can see that better? Okay. All right, so we have Ace of Swords. And again, like probably when you guys were going through these cards, some of these sword cards were like, ugh, that feels nasty, right? Because some of the energies are tough energies with the swords, but Ace of Swords is a pretty great card. It really, to me, is because I always perceive aces to be mastery, right? So mastery of thoughts and thinking. You really have leveled up in regard to your thoughts and thinking. You're seeing things with clarity. You are seeing things from a different and better perspective. This can be new thoughts and ideas, all of that kind of stuff. So again, it's like I always see this as kind of God's hand offering you better thinking, better thoughts, better perspectives coming through. And to me, like this crown is like about that mastery. Maybe we have some mountains in the background. Maybe you've had some challenges in the past, but you're choosing to see it differently. You're choosing to view it differently. Now, when it is reversed, that might mean like a sudden change, like in perspective, or a sudden change in your life. An imbalance in the mind, like really struggling to gain balance over the thoughts and thinking. Maybe not having clarity of mind, not seeing things clearly, not understanding, feeling totally blinded, feeling totally lost. So it can be that when we have that reversed. Then we have the Two of Swords. So with the Two of Swords, so mine is like this woman who is holding the two swords. She is out in the moonlight. She is wearing a blindfold, but I see her next to the water. I see her dress looking very flowy. And I see her tuning in and listening to her intuition, right? So she's not listening to all of the comments from the peanut gallery to impact her life. She's not allowing other people's thoughts and perspectives to influence her. She's listening to herself. And she is oftentimes too is like she's making a choice, right? She's trying to choose between something and she's tuning into her intuition to do it. So that can be representative of that. It can also represent balance, right? Like she's kind of balancing herself between the two swords. It can be coming back to peace, coming back to herself, coming back to like listening to within. So I always see this as not a negative thing, this blindfold, when this is upright. I always see this as like she's just tuning in and tuning everything out that doesn't matter. And then when we have it reversed, this for me is confusion. She doesn't know which to choose. She's not listening to her intuition to make a decision. She's because again, it can be a choice between two things. She's feeling confused. She's feeling a little bit lost. She's refusing to see something. Right? There's something maybe that she knows, but she's refusing to see it for whatever reason, or she's afraid to see it. She's ignoring it. I mean, how many times have all of us in our life kind of intuitively known something, and then, but you want to ignore it. You want to pretend that's not the truth. So it's that kind of energy, right? Being blind to it. So Three of Swords, isn't this a cheerful one? We have a heart that is surrounding barbed wire. Yeah, it's a nasty one.
This is like one of the nastiest ones I think there are.
I think
I'm not even as afraid of death as I am of this one.
I think so too. I think it's like such a gross, I mean, the trees are like wilted and gnarly, and while I think those trees are kind of cool, like I don't think they're meant to be like a positive vibe here in this card. It's very dark looking in the background. So I mean, this can be connected with heartbreak, this and struggling with thoughts in connection with this heartbreak, or connection with a relationship being really impacted and influenced by a relationship that they have in their life that is really breaking them, that is really not doing positive things for them in their life at all. It's like, doing all of the things that this energy of this card is basically, it's impacting them in a really negative way. This can also be so if somebody, for example, is asking me about, and every once in a while I do get this question, like, is my partner being faithful to me? And I get the Three of Swords. Like, this for me sometimes is about a third party being involved in some way, shape, or form, right? So chances are, if you pull this, somebody's lying, somebody's cheating, and it isn't always, but especially if they ask that question. And if you get that vibe, usually you'll get that vibe, like there's a third party involved here. There's some kind of an impact here with this that is being brought in by another person. So sometimes it's like that betrayal. Love triangle kind of energy stuff. Then when we have it reversed, I just kind of see it similarly, honestly. I don't view this as like ever a bright and shiny card. This like it is like maybe like to that they're really, really struggling to navigate the emotional pain. Maybe they already know about the third party situation and they're struggling to like process it, or there's been a heartbreak and they're struggling to process it. They're struggling to navigate the grief, or they have a lot of grief around it. So this can really show you somebody who's very heartbroken through that, like just emotional stress, maybe feeling confused, maybe not wanting to see that, maybe they feel that there's somebody else involved, but they're not quite ready to acknowledge that. And that's up to you. You want to like navigate these things carefully, right? You don't want to be like, oh, well, your man's cheating on you because it doesn't always mean that. And like, you don't want to just think about how you're going to say that, right? But you might include that for them to connect with their own intuition about that. You might say, sometimes this represents there being another party involved. Have you ever felt something like that? Have you ever had concerns about that? Because usually that person has felt something in connection with that, right? We know, like us women especially, we just know. So they usually will like either agree with you or be like, no, like that's not it at all. I'm just really struggling with my own heart-based issues, my own thoughts around this relationship, or I'm feeling really stuck, or my energy is being really pulled to another person, or so it can sometimes be representing them, and them putting their energy into another relationship as well, or thinking about that, right? Thoughts, swords. So thinking about that, like exploring the possibilities of that, and that usually is a warning, like this isn't where you want to go. You want to handle this in the way that's going to be best to honor everybody involved. So, how can you approach this in a better way? So the next one is the Four of Swords. Four of Swords, we have this guy who is seemingly not alive or resting, on this, what am I going to call this? I don't know, laying on something, so it always looks to me kind of like a funeral, honestly.
Like a coffin or a
Yeah.
sarcophagus or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Like like something like that, right? But he kind of does look to be at peace, right? And like I always imagine, like in mine, it appears to be kind of like a church type environment. We have the angel up above, right? The angel watching over. So sometimes, I mean, for me, when it's upright, I kind of see this as like the person is either getting rest or needing to get rest. Maybe they need to relax a little bit more. They need to take a little bit more time for relaxation. I never read this as like someone's going to die. Again, just similar to like the death card. Okay. But like there is a need for more rest, relaxation here. There is, maybe a need to like take a little vacation or a little trip or a little getaway, time for reassessing their life, time to spend time alone, time to like acknowledge these thoughts that are trying to come through, right? Because sometimes people avoid quiet because they're not wanting to like listen to the thoughts that are coming through, and so sometimes this can be the avoidance of that, so encouraging them to be open to that. The Four of Swords reverse, I see that as like even more needed, right? It's even more necessary for them to get this rest and relaxation, to slow down. Maybe they're feeling really restless. Maybe they're, have you ever, I know I've experienced this myself where I've like gotten really, really anxious about things. And so I have like this surge of energy, but it's like almost like a manic energy where you're like, it's nervous energy, right? Like where you're just, there's such a nervous energy and you're pushing your body, you're pushing yourself too much. There's more of a need for relaxation, that kind of stuff. Maybe they're feeling alone and isolated. Maybe they're feeling really burnt out. Sometimes we'll see like health issues coming up in connection with this, right? So like when it's reversed, it's like these swords are really getting the best of them. Their thoughts are really getting the best of them. Their anxiety is really getting the best of them, and they need to relax. They need to find a way to relax. They need to find a way to navigate the stress so that they're not in a place where, like it burns them out. So that is the Four of Swords. I've always, like, whenever I've noticed this, though, I really do see like the peace on his face, and that to me is very telling. Like, I really think, like, finding rest, finding relax. I might even say like finding relaxation, but in through spirituality. So sometimes this can be a meditation card even. Let's see. So Five of Swords. Another wildly cheerful card. We've got all these dark clouds. We've got these people standing in the foreground looking out over the water. I think, yeah, one of them is looking back because he's starting to recognize the man behind him. And if you notice the man behind him, he's got all the swords. He's got all 5 of the swords, and he just kind of looks like he can't be trusted. Like maybe he doesn't have the best of intentions. So for like number one, I see this as sometimes like as like a power struggle, because like this guy like doesn't need to have all 5 of these swords, but he does. You know what I mean? So he's like trying to like take all of the power. He's trying to be shady. Like there's something very underhanded about this. He doesn't look like he has good intentions. So this oftentimes is about there not being good intentions. And so sometimes for me, I feel like this is connected with the person that I'm reading for. And so it's like, maybe you have emotions, or maybe your thoughts are kind of justifying what it is that how you want to handle this. But I want you to really listen to your soul. I want you to really look within and ask yourself, what is the kind way? What is the loving way to handle this? What is the way to handle this that is within my own, moral compass? Like, am I following that? Because sometimes we do things out of emotion that just aren't the right thing to do. And so it's a pause, and can we listen to that? It can be sometimes like destruction, right? I usually say like that, though, that these people don't get destroyed, these people don't get stabbed in the back because this guy is turning around, right? This guy is kind of onto it, is kind of catching on, right? So if I'm feeling like there's a concern for the person that I'm reading for, when I read this upright, it's kind of like you're aware, like you have a sense that there's this person in your life that doesn't really have the best of intentions, or it doesn't really wish you well, or might be trying to fool you in some way or influence you in some way in a negative way, but you're starting to catch on. Trust your intuition about that. So when we have that reversed, it's it's about like letting go of your pride, or it's about feeling defeated, right? Like I always imagine that when this is reversed, that either this is about to happen or already has, where somebody has really stabbed you in the back. Somebody has really been deceitful, has really violated something in you. It has really just gotten the best of you, and that maybe like I'm talking about that guy that turned around. Maybe he didn't turn around. Maybe he didn't recognize that this person that was behind him had all 5 of the swords and intended to take the power. So it's something that was missed. And so usually this is about like recognizing everybody's motives here, learning the lesson from it, and moving on. So that's that 5 of swords. So again, you guys will see, like I include in the handouts the more traditional, but I have also connected a lot with my own personal meanings with this based on the things that have spoke to me from the cards. And you guys will do the same. Like Rachel is asking about her meaning on her angel deck was so different from what I was talking about. And you might read differently with the angel deck versus a different deck, right? You might base it more off of the words that are there or the feeling, because they were created in a totally different energy. And so the messages are going to be different sometimes. Or you might find that some of the meanings kind of carry over through all of the different decks for you because you just really connect with that meaning, but then some of them don't. Like sometimes when I'm reading on my angel deck, the messages are a bit different. So just honoring those messages as they come through. There's not a right or a wrong, but you'll find like as you work with the decks more, that I don't know, that just some things like you might read them differently, and then there might be some themes that repeat, but you'll find your flow. You'll find what connects and what works best for you. So the Six of Swords. Now we always have this one, we have like a man who is in a boat with a woman and her child, and they're kind of, I always imagine that he's sort of rescuing them in the moonlight, rescuing them for some reason at night in the dark. I can remember pulling this card for somebody who was in like a domestic violence relationship and had just recently left, right? And doesn't that just like capture the energy of this, where they chose to leave, but they really had to do that like during a time when their abuser was not home, and so it was like very quick. It was as often abusive relationships have to be left very quick and very hidden, and that happened. So it was really interesting to me because I think that perfectly captures the energy of this card. But like it, I think more, it's not always going to represent that, obviously, but it's about like leaving difficult times behind. Leaving a difficult situation is about choosing to leave that. And you might choose to leave that quickly because something happens that triggers that, whether you're just like at that place where you're not ready to put up with it anymore, willing to put up with it anymore, or something happens that really triggers that and moves that forward more quickly. But oftentimes it's like, I'm not willing to put up with this particular situation anymore and I'm choosing to leave. So it can be that they're preparing to leave or that they have left, depending on where that shows up and depending on what you're feeling. I always imagine, though, this is like renewed hope, right? They're going to a better situation. I always see this person who is rowing for them, just like that's, whether that's their guides or whether that's actually somebody who has helped. But they're being taken out of one challenging situation and moved into another. And
But
sometimes
they're being protected by the swords.
absolutely.
They need some extra protection at that time, and that's
and notice,
them...
yes, thank you for mentioning the swords, because you're right. Like I'm not even talking about that. Notice that she has all the swords, right? Like the swords, for me, tend to connect with power as well, right? So like she has all the swords. Her thoughts are in a good place, and she feels powerful, and she hasn't left left physically, but left her thoughts in that situation. Like she left, she moved on, she stepped forward into something new. And even if it was a crisis situation, because sometimes this will represent that, she left and she's moving on and she's moving forward in her life. So sometimes when this is reversed, it's like that needs to happen, that there is a need for change, to step out of a situation that has kept you stuck for a really long time. And by the way, the situation could be your thought patterns, right? How many of us have been stuck in our way of perceiving things or our way of thinking about things for so long until we get it, and then we're like, oh my God, how did I ever think that way? But you don't get it till you get it. And so sometimes it can be that, like, they're just finally beginning to understand, like, oh, I need to like move forward with this in my life, or I need to let this go, or I need to let this way of thinking, this way of being go. So it can be that, it can be like that they're really struggling to let go, they're really struggling to move forward, they're really feeling stuck in the situation. Like things are really heating up in that situation, really coming to the point where he or she, because it doesn't have to be a she, is making that decision to make a change, make a major change. But whatever that change is going to be a positive thing for their highest and best good. So we want to invite them to listen to their intuition about that, but they might consider, especially if they're on the brink of making that decision, they might consider making that decision and going for it. Seven of Swords. So I was with this one, so we've got this tent, we have this guy who's carrying the swords, right? But there's still some swords up here. I always have envisioned, based on the energy that I feel with this card, that this man has like snuck into this person's home, this person's tent while they are sleeping, has taken their swords. But notice that he didn't take all of the swords. Okay. And to me, this is so representative of people take things from us, right? And people can physically take things from us, or they can take just from us in terms of like our energy, right? Like we can give and give and give, and they can take without good intentions. But at the end of the day, they cannot take everything from you. It is not possible. They cannot take your light. They cannot take your soul. And so it is a reminder that no matter what has been taken from you, whether it's something physical, whether it's something spiritual, whatever it is, they didn't take everything. And it's important to remember that. It's important to remember the gifts that are still left. So I tend to think about, like, is there somebody in your life that has been around that maybe again doesn't have the best of intentions, that wants to take, that wants to just receive and they're not giving, or that they are being deceptive in some way and they don't have the best of intentions. So we have this energy. Jen, I'm curious, like, is your card is pretty similar to this, I imagine, because you have the
brighter weight.
Okay, so it's
Now
similar.
I'm getting
It's
a
little
glare.
different, right? But it's the same idea. You can see the tents in the background.
Yep.
And he's leaving. He can't fit all the swords in his arms, right?
Yep.
So he has to leave that behind. So it's very much a deceitful energy, somebody without good intention. So I might encourage people to take a look at, like, who in your life you're having a feeling about that you need to pay attention to. And it might be somebody they love very much. It might be somebody that they're just meeting and they have that feeling. But, how many times do we ignore that feeling? And so this can be that validation of that. Seven of Swords reverse could be the avoidance of that kind of situation. Like, you recognize that somebody was untrustworthy and you said, nope, I'm not going to do this. It could be after the fact, after this has happened, that you're finding your way, that you're connecting with what you still have left. Or it could be that they're struggling with the after effects of what somebody has done to deceive them. And again, this is about recognizing what you still have. And this is about learning the lessons that you can learn from this, right? Having the perspective that you need to have, learning the lessons that you can have from this, and moving forward with your life, not hanging on to it, not spending too much time focusing on it, or honoring that voice within that's saying to you, you can't quite trust this person. This will help if you can catch this early enough. Sometimes it'll help people to avoid some pretty nasty circumstances. So the Eight of Swords. These are so cheerful, you guys. So again, we have this woman standing out in what appears to be a very stormy looking day. It's raining. There's dark clouds. She's standing out in the rain. She's barefoot. It's muddy. Not really the ideal kind of circumstances, right? And you'll notice that she's surrounded by the swords. And so she's trapped in her thinking. Her thinking is keeping her caged, is keeping her in bondage. See, she's tied up, she's blindfolded. And what I think is really interesting is. And you can recognize this, like you see the way that in the card, the swords surround her, but they don't really surround the front of her. So she thinks that she's trapped because she's blindfolded. She thinks that she's stuck. She thinks that she can't make progress. She thinks that she can't move forward. But if she were able to just release that blindfold in some way, she would see that she has all of the power to move forward, to release herself, to step out of this terrible situation. Powerful stuff. So this really is a message of you're not as stuck as you think you are. And how are your thoughts keeping you stuck? And how are you boxing yourself in with your thoughts? How to release the bondage of the ways that you're holding yourself back. And this oftentimes very much is connected with how you're holding yourself back. You know, this isn't normally about other people doing this. This is about a prison that we have created in some way, whether it's through choices that we've made, self-sabotaging choices, thoughts that we're focusing on that just aren't helping us, that are keeping us stuck. So there's a real message of paying attention to your thoughts, looking at things from different perspectives, being creative, having creative ideas. If she could just like shake her body a little bit, in my opinion, she could shake loose that bandage. You know, it doesn't even look that tight on there. So there very much is that message with that, but it can represent somebody who feels very, very stuck, restricted, feeling trapped. When this is reversed, I see this as them having freed themselves. You know, there's something that they were stuck in that they made the decision to free themselves. And I'm sure many of us have had that experience that when we decide that we're done with something, when we decide that we're moving forward, everything moves forward, even if we felt really stuck, right? So she has made the decision that she is not going to stay in bondage. She is not going to stay stuck anymore. So if you were to pull this, especially with like the devil card, it's like this person is feeling really stuck, but they have all of the power within. They have the ability to free themselves. So that's really important. So I really love that, because what appears to be kind of a scary card is an opportunity to really coach this person on how they're keeping themselves stuck, and how do they need to look at it from a different perspective, and encouraging that for them. Nine of Swords. She looks like she's having a good time, right? This woman laying in bed, looking very unhappy, looking like maybe she has a headache, or she's struggling to sleep. Maybe she's waking up from a nightmare. And she's like surrounded by swords, right? So this can be my nightmare card. You know, this is like, it can be my feeling very stuck, feeling very trapped. This can be a depression card. You know, your thoughts are keeping you stuck in bed. You know, difficulty with sleeping, anxiety, stress, worry is just really keeping them trapped, feeling stuck, feeling like they're in a place of despair. So not like the best vibes that come from this card. For me, I see this as, when it's reversed, as like releasing this, you know, as a stepping forward, a healing from this in some way, or making progress in the direction of healing from the anxiety, the depression, the nightmares. That they're making changes to like better themselves, to see things from a more positive perspective, to free themselves, to heal themselves. So like if I were to get this card, like for example, just to kind of keep talking about how cards work together, with the Moon card, we're definitely talking about dreams, nightmares, challenges at night, that kind of stuff. So Nine of Swords. You can even see, I don't know how well you guys can see this, but like sometimes I get drawn to like this bird in the background that's literally being stabbed by the sword. You know, the sword has you stuck. Your thoughts have you stuck. Your freedom is feeling stuck because of the way that you're perceiving things, because of the anxiety, because of the depression. So there really is, whenever there's swords, like there's work to be done on the thoughts and thinking. Especially if I pull a lot of them, I know like, wow, this person is spending a ton of time in their head, and that internal dialogue needs to look different, needs to look better.
Swords give Aquarius, Libra, and Gemini a really bad name. I mean, especially the Ten of Swords. I mean, come on.
But it's, you know, it's not always negative, right? It can be like positive, like thoughts,
Right.
Right? But like,
Yeah.
you know, like air tends to be connected with the mind and thoughts and all of that, right? Like you guys can really spend a lot of time in your head. And so like this is about, what does your time in your head look like?
Yeah. Yeah, that way they're pretty accurate.
You guys could be incredibly intelligent. I always think about like, I've watched like through the coaching work that I do now and through the counseling work that I used to do, like some of the people who are just like highly intelligent struggle the most because like they spend so much time in their head, and it's like a matter of, you know, how do we make that time spent in the head useful and positive? Because when this energy is flipped around, when you have your thoughts in the right place, you are like going to be the most successful in your life. Thoughts create things, right? So like in a lot of ways, like as much as these cards look negative, when you get that right, when you get that to a positive place, you're manifesting left and right, you're feeling good about yourself,
Yeah.
you're feeling really positive, you're feeling like you have clarity, you're feeling like you know, hopeful and optimistic and excited about life. And so like it's such a powerful thing too, swords are.
If you can get out of your ego, it's a really good thing.
Yes, yes. And everything is, you know, there are light aspects to it and shadow aspects, right? So the more out of the shadow, the more out of the ego, and the more into the light, the better. So like when these, you know, when somebody is in a great place with their thoughts, it's incredible. And it's the number one reason that I see people really shift out is they see things from a different perspective. They start to like look at the world differently. And that's very empowering. So the next card is the 10 of Swords. So 10 of Swords, we have, you know, this man who, again, I always like notice the red on people, right? Like, so somebody who, I always see this as somebody who was like, is naturally really powerful, right? But again, they're not tapped in, they're not tuned into their power. They're really being, this is like the negative thoughts are winning, right? And it's really pinning them down. It's really keeping them stuck. Maybe they're feeling really imprisoned, really stuck, really tormented. This can be like the dark night of the soul sometimes. This can be sometimes connected with like slander and gossip too. You know, what other people are saying and the how they're perceiving that is really keeping them stuck. It's preventing them from connecting with who they really are. And that's kind of true for all of these cards, the sword cards. Or this can be rock bottom, right? Really struggling a lot. Now, when this is reversed, I see this as being released personally myself, you know. So I see them as choosing to step into the light a little bit more and have more positive thinking. Some people would interpret this as negative thinking as well, but I see this as a shift into the positive, a choosing to not allow themselves to be pinned down by this anymore. They're on top.
they're on top and the swords are like gonna drop at any any second, and release him and let him go.
Right. But like
Yeah.
when it's upright, this person has struggled a lot of negative thinking, a lot of, being in a pretty dark place. Let's see. So we've got Page of Swords next. So Page of Swords, first of all, like one of the things that I've always just sort of noticed about the Page of Swords is like that he's like, Pages, like as we talked about, it's a younger energy, but like look how big this sword is, right? He almost to me looks as though he is struggling to hold the sword up. He's holding it up, but he's struggling with it. So I think this is so perfect because I always see this as, like this person is making an effort to see things from a new perspective, to try on a new way of thinking, to look at the world in a more positive way. And it feels really difficult for anybody who's ever worked on their thoughts and thinking, it feels really difficult to think different thoughts, to break up your thought patterns, to see it different ways. It feels really challenging at first, right? Just like it's difficult for him to hold this word right now until he gets more used to it. So I always think that's interesting, but there's like, I don't know, he just looks really peaceful to me. This is like where we're starting to shift into peaceful, a new way of thinking. Maybe it's just a curiosity. Sometimes I connect this with a curiosity. So maybe like, okay, I'm opening to different perspectives. I'm opening to different ways of viewing things. When this is reversed, I kind of see this as, maybe that they're not open to seeing things in a different way. Or maybe like they're meddling with things. Sometimes I see it as that as well. Maybe they're meddling with things. They're like trying to like manipulate or be unkind or influence other people's thoughts that don't see things in the way that they see things. It can be kind of that energy. Or they're just, again, like refusing to allow new energy, new perspectives from coming in. And maybe the universe is trying to arrange for that. It's trying to help them to see things differently, but they're so stuck in the way that they see things that they're not open to it. So this can be a message to be open to it. The Knight of Swords. So Knight of Swords, rapid energy, right? This is like a rapid shift in thinking. This is maybe suddenly like feeling really brave and feeling ready to take on the world and feeling like all of a sudden like more positive. I've had days where I just wake up and I feel like, wow, I feel really different. I see things really different. It can kind of represent the energy like, wow, I just like, maybe like if you're in a place where you've struggled for a while and then all of a sudden like things just shift, you just get it, you just understand it, and you're like ready to charge into whatever this is, full speed ahead, excited, brave, courageously, all of that stuff, fearlessly, maybe even competitively, right? This can be competitive, the Knight energy. So when we have this reversed, if you can imagine, like there's like a recklessness, right? When something is moving quickly, and especially if we connect that to thoughts. So there's a recklessness, there's a downward spiral, there's thoughts bringing them quickly into a dark place. This can be, especially if it's surrounded with a lot of cups, drug and alcohol abuse. Somebody who is really struggling to change their thoughts, and like maybe like they went from a really great positive place to like a negative place really quickly. So it's that kind of a shift. And then we have the Queen of Swords. Queen of Swords is like a boss. She is like just owning it. She is, really has achieved some level of mastery or a leveled up, again, with similar to the Ace of Swords in her life. She is, but the Queen of Swords like doesn't mess around. She does not allow people in her life that like bring the bullshit, right? Like she just sees it clearly. She sees people for what they are. She sees circumstances for what they are, and anything that does not serve her for her highest and best good, she gets rid of it. But she does it all with a sense of humor. I love that about the Queen of Swords. I love that energy. She just does it with it. She's witty, right? Like thinking about thoughts and thinking. She's very witty. She's very smart, sharp mind, that kind of stuff. She might be very sarcastic, the Queen of Swords, but so very in her head, but like she gets it and she sees things clearly and she has clarity of mind, and knows what she wants and knows how to like approach situations, right? So she's just incredibly powerful. And the King of Swords might represent a male energy that's a very similar energy to that. This is somebody who's very intellectual, somebody who's very like mentally gifted in that way, you know, so they might be more logical. They might just like be absolutely brilliant. Same with the Queen. You know, they're somebody who's like an achiever. They you know, they go after it, but it tends to be based on like mental stuff. Oh, I forget to do Queen of Swords reversed. So Queen of Swords reversed is like you know, when you think about that energy reversed, you know, this is somebody who's like really spiteful, really maybe they're very intelligent, but they use that to like be hurtful. They use it to you know, be manipulative with people. Have you ever met somebody like that who's like so brilliant, but they use it for the wrong stuff? They use it to be harmful, spiteful, critical, cold, that kind of stuff. So that's that Queen of Swords.
Maybe a little sociopath energy.
It can be. It doesn't have to like be quite at that level, but it's like that energy in its shadow where they really need to make some adjustments to that.
Yeah.
So like, for example, if I had a male client coming in asking about the woman that he just started dating and I pulled the Queen of Swords reversed, I would say like, you know, like I am feeling kind of a manipulative energy here with this, or an energy of like the sarcasm or the things that she says while she thinks that maybe they're funny can be very hurtful. You know, it can be that kind of energy. It might not be the best high vibrational relationship for that person. And then the King of Swords reversed is similar, right? The King of Swords can be very cruel, can be very manipulative, very authoritarian, right? Using his power for the wrong things. You know, because he's so in his head, this is like moods can be sort of all over the place, right? Because he thinks and overthinks and can be very critical. And maybe like even like it can be even like to the point that it's like sociopathic or evil, you know, with either one of these. And it doesn't have to be that dramatic, but sometimes it is. Sometimes this is just like, no, this is not somebody that you want in your life. Like when we think about intelligence, right? When somebody uses that intelligence for the wrong reasons, that can be very problematic. So we just want to make sure that like if we're reading for somebody in that way, maybe it's about them, maybe like they need to understand how they can use that energy in more of a light focused way. So those are the swords, and we're going to be diving in. We're going to be doing learning more about reading. We're going to be learning more about threads. We're going to be exploring some more things and really building upon our skills for the last classes. But these are all of the cards. These are we've gone through each and every one of them. So I want to invite you guys, contact me if you would like to do a reading over email for someone. You also can post it, you know, if you want to post it and just say, hey, I'm wanting to do some practice readings. But the warning that I'm going to give you there with that is you're going to get a lot of people who are like, yes, me, please. And I've seen people do that. And literally, so one person that I know did that in my my Facebook group, and she literally ended up doing 100 readings. So like you might say like for the first 5 people that respond or something, you might want to put a limit on it. She was happy to just do these like quick little practice readings, but like to me, I was like, oh my God, like how do you have time for that? So like just exploring what's going to be best for you, but I'm happy to connect that for you. I would love to hear from you guys, like in comments in the group, like how those practice readings have gone, are going for you, what questions are coming up. I will put some practice stuff up, but I'm trying not to at this point overwhelm, because you guys are sharing your own spreads. You guys are practicing readings. And so I really want to like step into now this becoming a discussion about the readings that we're doing, and everybody kind of like practicing their readings on each other and things like that, because I don't want to overwhelm and make it be too much work. But let me know if like they're, you know, if you're needing or wanting more exercises. I will try to put 1 or 2 up for you guys, but again, I don't want to overwhelm. So that is today's class. I will have this posted for the people who aren't able to join us. And then we have 2 weeks left of class, guys. So feel free to bring your questions, okay? All right, I will see
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for joining, Jen. Oh, Stephanie must have stepped out, but thanks for joining, Stephanie. Thanks for joining, Jen. And I'll see you guys next week.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thanks.